Hi, everyone.
Uh, Hang on. Oh yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're back. Great. So we already have some questions. I think some of the things are concerns around the Miro for accessibility.
Mm.
Andy asked a question, I think more about like the operational tasks. So I think there's an understanding of why you did the original kind of like looking at the accessibility issues in Miro, but I think the question's more about like going beyond like in the way you're using the Kanban. So why did you keep that in the Miro board, I think?
Is that one about prioritizing procuring management tool? That the question we're looking at?
Yeah, I think the other question you answered it in the text, but their question was specifically about the operation management tasks rather than like I think the looking at the accessibility.
Right. Okay. So why do we use like both Miro and Jira? So Jira is like used by the product team, and as such we don't really have like, because the idea of this is that we wanted to like create visibility across the product portfolio. So we've got like 5 different teams, and the leadership wanted like stakeholders and like leaders at the co-op to be able to just like dip in and out and just like look at like the metrics of like each team. With Jira, there's a bit more of like a learning curve. You're not going to get this like really, because what we've got at the minute is like you can go on like Miro and see straight away where you're standing. You can see it's really easy to see like the progress. Jira doesn't really offer you this. Really, Jira is to like manage the work inside the team, but it's not really, doesn't create that visibility of like the progress made over time. So I think that's why. And so to go back to the question, why we got the Kanban and Jira at the same time is because the Kanban in Miro offers that visibility to like people outside of the team. So that makes
Right.
sense.
Um, and moving forward, so you mentioned that there are limitations with Miro, and it's been chosen for the MVP. Do you have another tool in mind or how you would like move this along?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because so the main kind of like drawback of like Miro is like this issue with accessibility. But apart from that, the manual aspect of Miro and the fact that it's cheap has lots of advantages. It's we are not kind of like tied to like a contract. So if there's something we don't like, then we just take it out. What I like about it is that it's this we're kind of like constantly refining and like learning about the process. So as we learn, like that, what you've seen here has just changed like so many times, like over the last few months. So, and we're kind of like ruthless about, if something doesn't work or like add value, then we just put it in the bin and there's no cost. We don't have to like involve like any third party. So at that stage, I kind of like see it as a bit of like a DIY solution operating in like a very large firm. But I think the bottom line is that it's creating value for us. If and the value we kind of count in terms of like the number of tickets, that accessibility tickets that we complete, and that would not have been done, if it wasn't for that systematic approach to like working on accessibility. So yes, it's not perfect, but it's creating value now instead of like chasing that like perfect solution that might create value down the line. So yeah, I think that's why we're looking at Miro. Maybe in the future we will be looking at purchasing like a solution or just building something that's more automated. But if I'm completely honest, it's not on the roadmap for now.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. And I guess what you said, it's like really adaptable. So I can see it's kind of a way that you can change things quite rapidly and see the effect.
of course,
So
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. One of the questions from Annie, how did you transition to doing this work? I imagine it was a big change for the team. How long did it take?
You know what? It's funnily enough, it's not that bad. Like, I've tackled it like on a team by team basis. So I've not done like everything all at once, so one team at a time. And so like what it takes is a couple of sessions where you kind of like sell the vision a little bit, and you need to kind of like get people on board, and you need to be able to like demonstrate like the value. And of course, when you've already got like teams on board who are part of the process, then it's a lot easier to like onboard like the other teams, because you can already like point to like the progress. You can look at like the number of tickets done. You can look at like the metrics. You can just like go to like Slack and Teams and like look at like the feedback you get from like stakeholders and like the directions and stuff. And like suddenly, it becomes like a lot easier to sell for like the product teams. And another thing is that this needs to be as kind of like light touch as possible, because these product teams are busy. But once they like see the benefits, and once you kind of like start wrapping in like this kind of like a systematic approach to it, then you find that very quickly like the teams just like start putting like maybe like weekly accessibility tickets in their sprints, for instance. So yeah, maybe it does like seem big, but if I'm honest, it wasn't that hard. Like yeah, it's probably going to be different like everywhere you work. And I mean, at the co-op, we're kind of like lucky because accessibility is just, I mean, we don't really have to like talk about like it's something we do or not. It's understood, and it's never discussed that yes, we are doing accessibility. So all this is just a way of like approaching it with a kind of like like it's like a standardized like framework really. So yeah, so like basically the short answer is it wasn't as long as you think it would. Yeah.
Have you onboarded all teams on, or are you still in that process?
No, we're still working on it at the minute.
Yeah, it's a big organization, hey?
Yeah, it's quite big, yeah. But like again, like I said, the once you start like getting like a few teams on board, then after that, you just like point at the results, and like everybody can see the benefit of like doing it this way. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. One question that kind of relates to what we've been discussing from Alicia. You mentioned that managing these ally improvements is a full-time job. How did you make the argument that others should spend their time on this instead of taking it all on yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I was honest and say, okay, well, I've kind of like shared like the kind of like the vision of like what that process like could work, should work like, and I spent a bit of time with you, but of course you understand, this is not my day job. I've got something else. And people were kind of like receptive to that, because by then like the value has been demonstrated, so it's not like, okay, well, I'm going to ask you to do all this extra work, but you're not going to get anything in return. By then the value is tangible. They got like the feedback from like users, they see the metrics like going up, stakeholders are happy. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And with that, like bringing management on board, how did you find that process?
Well, we've got like a fairly like the teams are like, I've got like a fairly flat structure. So they've all the product teams at the co-op are like autonomous. So you just, every time I like on board like a new team, everybody's coming in. So I've got some like principal engineers, like product managers, product owners, like delivery people. So in terms of like management, like the management is kind of like embedded in like the product teams at the co-op. So I didn't really have to, do any kind of like sales pitch to like execs or anything like that. It's all kind of like self-managed within the product teams.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Question about like testing with like disabled people.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to pick next. Do you want to go
Yeah.
ahead with that one?
So of course, so like all the tests we do are done in Fable. So and they're done with people with disabilities. So we test with people, using screen readers, of course, magnifiers, and like a wide range of assistive technologies. So yeah, so we don't rely that much on like automated audits. So the only thing we do is like Lighthouse, but all the rest, all the tests are done manually by people with disability.
Great, wonderful. And with that, like, how are you choosing when you're doing the work? So let's say you've done something, you've done some work to repair something. Do you then retest it, or does that get prioritized somewhere else?
No, we do, yeah. So that's also part of the process. So what we do is, we go through like the test findings. We create like tickets based on that, and we prioritize based on like the impact it's going to have to our users. We release like it goes live, and then if it's something kind of like complex, then we might like test it like kind of QA it with like in Fable during the process, or otherwise we're just going to wait until like the end of the cycle, run the test again on the same features on the same pages, and then that's going to kind of like tell us whether or not like our fix has actually resolved that issue, and that's going to be reflected in like the new metrics we get as well.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Well, that's all the time we have with you, Romain. If anyone has any further questions, you can feel free to ask in Slack as well. So hopefully, but I think we covered most of them. But thank you so much for your time, Romain. Another thing for everyone else, we are going to put surveys in the chat after every session so speakers can get feedback. So I will post that as well, and I'll also post some other links as well in the break. So yeah, the surveys just really help give feedback for people, so we really appreciate if you can fill in those forms. But we'll come back in 15 minutes to hear Lanray's talk, so I hope you can join us then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye.